Enforcement, Mr. Carville, Mr. LeBeer. Economic Development, Mr. Offal, Mr. LeBeer.
Attended the BDC meeting. Trish Wilson from the Economic Development Wing was there and gave them some pretty good info on various programs that are out there. So hopefully we start to see some uptick as a result of them.
Fire Committee, Mr. Carville, Mr. LeBeer. Personnel Committee, Mr. Carville, Mr. DeShays.
We sat through some interviews. Would be a thing later on, one item later on, I think the agenda.
Police Committee, Mr. Carville, Mr. DeShays.
Talked to the chief, everything's going as planned, I guess. If there is such a thing as planned, but no bumps in the road, that's what they say.
Recreation Commission, Mr. DeShays.
The next rock and skate hosted by the Massena Recreation will be Saturday, February 25th, from 7 to 9. Admission will be $5 for the event, and they have skates you can rent for $5. It's going over pretty good. It's something different, and they can upgrade their music a little bit better they play. And we'll even offer the participants to request song choices. That's a footnote. The Pee-wee sections, the Northern Zone Tier 2 sector will be hosted at the Massena Arena on March 3rd through the 5th. 6 teams will be participating in the tournament that starts on Friday morning at 8 a.m. and it ends on Sunday at 5 p.m. The teams are Massena, Watertown, Plattsburgh, Schenectady, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and the Adirondack. 2 teams from this section will move on to the state tournament. The Northeast Shootout. This broom ball tournament will be held March 10th through 12th at the Massena Arena. There are currently 12 teams that are coming to the tournament. Teams are from Maryland, Australia, and Canada, as well as local teams will be participating. Recreation House League Hockey. Massena Recreation is offering a House League Hockey option in March. It will start on March 6th and run through March 30th. We will offer 2 divisions, an under 8 division and under 11 division. The cost for the 8 sessions will be $40 per person. The program has been offered to the Massena hockey participants as well as other hockey programs. That's my report.
Thank you. Street Committee, Mr. Offal, Mr. LeBeer.
I don't have anything to add.
Went by today, the street light is up on Barnett. Thank you.
Yeah.
Water and Sewer, Mr. Offal, Mr. LeBeer. Initial public comment period. As always, we ask you to please stand and state your name for the record. Initial public comment period. Seeing none, moving on to old business, discussion of the Public Works facility. I had a couple calls last week, and actually had someone stop me on the street that weren't completely familiar with this, so I thought I would give a quick update so we all know what we're talking about here. As you know, the village agreed to sell property on South Main Street, which is the former site of our Public Works facility, but still had been in recent years used for various bulk items such as sand and salt and other storage items. Property on South Main Street was sold to St. Lawrence Soy. We plan to make a several $1 million investment and create a number of jobs. So it was a necessary decision that this board, important decision that this board made. So initially, my preferred thought was to consolidate the Public Works facility to our new location where we are on Robinson Road. So we purchased, this board purchased 33 acres of land in that area directly behind the Public Works facility on Robinson Road. But, you know, after a lot of discussions and holding a number of meetings with many of the citizens on Urban Drive, and touring their properties and hearing of the concerns that they have with our operation that's currently there and the concerns that they have with the commercial properties located on the other side of them, I have some reservations about relocating our bulk items to that property. From a purely fiscal thought, and it makes complete sense to do it. It's a no-brainer. We've reduced costs over years and really would realize substantial savings over a number of years by consolidating our facilities there and reducing our footprint. The question we have to decide is, do the residents of Urban Drive endure should they endure further inconveniences that they're enduring now? Is it fair to them to just put more there to just save money? That's a decision this board obviously, I think, has made, but has to make. The town's been considering an option to do something with their facility. They have an aging town garage out on South Racket. We have a sense of urgency to resolve this issue. We've sold the property. Next winter, we will not have that property. We have to do something, particularly at least for salt storage and the other bulk items. We have to do something. We've had some preliminary discussions with the town last spring, as a matter of fact, with regards to a temporary solution, a long-term solution, which would be maybe a shared facility. We had a little bit of discussion regarding potentially merging the two departments. But to this point, none of those have gained any traction. They're simply, they're in a different place than we are. They know they have to do something at some point. We have to do something now. I look at, given the current economic conditions and the various challenges that all of our local governments are facing, trying to control costs, continue to provide adequate services. In my view, it's the perfect time to look further down the road as to what we're going to do here in this community. Not only is it a perfect time to look at the public works facility, but other things we're doing here in this community between the village and the town. The size of our local government is too big, in my view, for the current fiscal climate and where this community is heading. We do a really good job here in Massena of shared services. We provide a number of services to the town, including code enforcement, building inspection, fire service. We provide the potable water through our water system. Both entities operate a joint recreation facility, or a department with a number of facilities that are shared, and we do a number of other things together. I think we're far ahead of most communities in the North Country with regard to shared facilities or shared services. So if the town has to renovate or construct a new town garage building here in the near future, and we know we have to do something, then I think we're foolish to not do something together with them. The problem is, how do we solve our immediate problem? And I'm in favor of looking beyond that. Consolidation was looked at in this community at least 2 times, probably 3 times formally, and each time, primarily because of the West Massena issue, consolidation hasn't looked like it's a good thing for Massena. I don't know if that's changed. I don't know if it makes sense to look at it again. There's a substantial amount of revenue that comes into this community from West Massena, taxes, $400,000 and some odd thousand from the town of Louisville that comes into our village. So can we save enough money, that's about money, save enough money by consolidating if we lose that? I'm not very good at math, but I know probably not. But given that, I think, and given the governor's interest in seeing shared services, seeing consolidation, seeing merging, there may be incentives out there, there may be reasons to look at this. There's also another option that I don't know if it has ever been considered, but there's 5 communities in this state that went to a coterminous form of government. In the quick version, there's a number of varying ways to do it, but the quick version explanation would be the village limits are expanded to the town's limits, and then the taxpayers have the voters have a number of options at their disposal. They could vote to form one form of government to manage both. You could have coterminous where there's 2 forms still. That really wouldn't make any sense. So, but I think we should look at that stuff. We should start to look at it now. I think before we make any investment, in long-term investment in this public works facility, we have to decide where we're going. And if there's some interest in looking at this, then maybe we have to look at something temporary. If there isn't any interest in that, then we have to make a permanent decision and decide where we best have to do that. So those are my thoughts on that. Trustees.
I'm in favor of exploring any idea that is going to be good for the village and town, both fiscally and in terms of size and right fitting to our current economic climate. My concern is going to be what I expressed at our last meeting, is that if we wait too many options for too long, and it comes back to the current DPW site, that we're not gonna have sufficient time to work with these folks to address concerns and do it right. So my concern is more on the timing of everything, whether it's gonna be a temporary fix or a permanent one. We gotta finalize plans and at least start moving on them to make sure it can come to fruition. So we're not months from now going, turns out we have to go to our current DPW site, and then rushing and not being able to be good neighbors and not doing it right. So my concern continues to be timing of it all. I'm open to any and all ideas that make sense. Shared services are definitely the way to go if possible, but obviously it gets a little more complicated when each side is looking for maximizing, their efficiency, and where do you do it, how do you do it, when do you do it, things like that. So I realize it may not be as easy as we'd like it to be, but I'm open to exploring anything. What do you, gentlemen?
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at the immediate concern, and the immediate concern is what's going to happen in December of next year.
Right.
If the town, or if we were to build a brand new facility, you're 3 years away easy. By the time you get the architectural work done, all your seeker work done, if you have to go someplace else. We've talked about thumbnailed some facilities, and there's power at some, there's natural gas at some, there's water at some, but there's not all three where everybody wants to go. So that's another cost that could pop up. I love the idea that you brought up about consolidation. I think it's a great idea. I've been a proponent of it for a long time. But again, the immediate concern for me is what we're going to do next winter. Matt and I were fortunate enough, or unfortunate enough, depending on how you look at it. We had a meeting here last week. The town was meeting. We said, let's stop in and we'll talk to the entire board, because we had talked to Councilman Carbone and O'Shaughnessy at a couple meetings about these identical topics and trying to find out where people were landing. And I know that the mayor and I had discussions about the outcome of our last meeting. Our last meeting was on February 7th, and he was going to reach out to the town supervisor to see if there was any of these lands available. The mayor and I had a discussion, and the flavor that he was getting was it would be entertained. Well, I guess what I was trying to press upon the town board, and I wasn't trying to be, wasn't trying to catch them off guard or ambush them by any stretch of the imagination. What I was trying to do was just let them know how close we are to making a decision. They have land, we don't have land. They have something we need. Is there any way that they could part with it? Is there any way that the two governments could work together? Very simply, and if at a very simple level, if we can't get this to happen, I have a hard time believing we're going to make this happen. Now, all that being said, how'd you make out with the town supervisor?
We had a brief meeting, and nothing's moved.
Okay.
Nothing's moved. I don't know where they're going to land on this.
Yeah, and then we're gonna, there's been suggestions, well, you could potentially go out where the New York State DOT is. Well, there's a reason the DOT is moving from there. They've got issues there, okay? That's why they put free water in for all the residents out there. We could potentially use we were offered potentially a temporary site at the South Racket, at their South Racket facility. That brings in, we have the railroad track issue that we've been trying to avoid. We may not be able to avoid that issue. The town was nice enough, at least two of them that we had talked to at meetings had said that's an option. They're going to have to discuss it with the remainder of their board.
Are you talking just salt storage?
Yes.
Okay.
Salt, sand, temporarily. you know? And I mean, I'm not gonna pretend to know the square footage that I'll need, that's why we've got Haas here. And whether or not that could work, I don't know. He and Mr. DiAgostino were at the meeting so that we have the subject matter experts available on any decisions that we were contemplating. But what I'd like to avoid, and what I hope we could avoid, is I would hope that the town of Massena wouldn't be trying to make money off the village in the situation that we're in. And like I impressed upon them that night, the reason we're in the position that we're in is it was a good economic decision for us to sell that property. Did we have a crystal ball back then? No, we knew that something had to happen. We did what we thought was due diligence. It wasn't a good idea, as you so eloquently explained before. Now we're looking for something else. The town has property. Is there some of that property that we could use? Small piece of it. So all that being said, maybe it won't snow next year. I don't know. Okay? Maybe it won't.
I'll make a healthy wager on that with you.
You give me the sleeves right off your vest. But, I mean, by no stretch of the imagination were we weren't trying to ambush the town, and I see Tommy's here, we weren't trying to ambush you guys, we were just wanted to make sure that everybody there was aware of the predicament that we were in.
Is there a closing date on the sale of the property?
Is there any chance that that would happen in the next 2 weeks?
Well, perhaps.
Is there any chance that that could happen in
I'm
the
a
next?
real optimistic person, but I'm not so optimistic about that one.
In the next, I had mentioned, and one thing that I did say at the meeting, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, because you were there, that we would like an answer by March 1st. And, you know, I was, and the answer could come at the two leadership levels.
Yeah, I think that was, to your point, that was the point in the question of, we respect where the town is, but as you said, they're on a different timetable than us, and it may not seem as urgent. So I think Trustee Offeld was just trying to emphasize the clock is ticking much louder for us, and it would be a great benefit if they could expedite any conversations they might have.
And I guess part of my comments earlier were aimed at, if we're gonna do a joint facility, makes sense. We would be crazy if we didn't. If they have to do something and we have to, even though we're on the different timelines, then maybe the only real solution for us is to do something temporary and work toward that goal. And work on this other stuff, whether it's consolidation, co-terminus, or whatever. But I mean, for us to spend a whole lot of taxpayer money and then to go out and do it, and us never really making any progress toward merging or consolidating or terminus or whatever path we take, we may not take any of those paths, but I'd hate to make the investment and it's just, history's proven this community, we put several $100,000 downstairs into this building for the police station, we put several $100,000 across the street. The town put several $100,000 into the rescue squad, when we had an opportunity many years ago to do a merged facility, and it would have been done, it would have been cheaper, and we would have been sharing services and sharing, and I imagine the savings this community would have had and how much more efficient our emergency services would have been. We missed that opportunity. This is an opportunity I don't want to see pass by. So if it means us having some pain, doing something temporary, and temporary might mean we use this salt storage facility, and maybe we've got to put more bulk material over at our current place right now. because of this, whatever, however that shakes out, so that we can give this a serious look. And if the town says, no, we don't want to do it, well, okay. But I think we need to do it. I think this community is, believes we should be doing it.
Oh, agreed.
There's too much government. There's too much cost associated with local government, much of which we don't control, but it's there. We have to provide local services. We have to have police, fire, blah, blah, blah. But when and where we can, we should. And this is the last thing in this village we haven't looked at merging, sharing, consolidating. And at the very least, it should be a shared facility, if nothing else.
Well, this whole situation just is totally symbolic of what you stated the need. You know, we have two separate boards who are doing their jobs, looking at what they believe to be the best interest of their constituents, but in reality, we're one community. You know, so the inefficiencies are kind of glaring in this scenario, that we're sitting here still debating, wondering, will this happen, what about this, can we get this? There are definite gains to be had if we can find some way in the options that you listed to consolidate, whether it's services, departments, or as a whole. I would not be terribly sad if I was out of a job here someday.
One of the things that we've talked about at the committee meetings that we've had, the joint meetings, I guess, for lack of a better term, is where would we build it? We talked about, okay, if the town and the village built that Robinson Road, that was the core, and then we had salt and sand somewhere else, where would you keep it? Then we also talked about, well, that wouldn't be a good idea because then you're not centralized, you're not using all the efficiencies that you could. So then there was talk about out on the Horton Road. So then if we put a joint facility out at the Horton Road, everybody moves out there, it's not 100% convenient for us, but by the same token, we're in a shared agreement with the schools. Bus garage over there, shared fuel station, so on and so forth. So then what do we do in that case? Do we walk away from that? Okay? So then we talked about, well, what if the town just remodeled their facility out at South Racket Road and let us at the same keep our sand and our salt there. So those are three ideas that I'd like to think some pretty intelligent people came up with. But just trying to get to have people say, yeah, I think that's a good idea and that's a direction they head, which circles back to what you said at 6:35. I need direction from this board. Not necessarily, from each board.
Right.
That's where we are. That's what we've been trying to do. Haas, correct me.
Chad Fish,
Tim, before you, do you think it'd be worth us trying to set up? How do you want to continue? Do you want to go?
If you're comfortable with the committee thing working right now, let's continue to do that. We're going to have a joint budget meeting with the town during the budget process to discuss joint recreation.
When is that?
We're not quite scheduled yet, but we're looking at April, sometime in April.
That's too long.
Right.
Yeah. Let me try and I'll work with Haas and with Francis, and we'll come up with a date, and we'll try and find a date that works for them as well. All right, thank you.
Chad Fish, motor equipment operator, Mr. Fayad.
Yeah, as a retirement, as a result of a retirement in January, I requested from the board on the January 17th meeting to replace that individual that retired, that being Terry Newsoff. Applications were selected, interviews were conducted, and we feel that Mr. Chad Fish fits the mold that would benefit the village of Massena. And it's to keep basically our level of labor involved at the DPW, so we can continue to provide the service that we offer this community. And I believe there's rumblings now at the DPW that there's another individual going to be going in the upcoming months. So just trying to give
So moved.
Mr.
Second.
Adair, second by Mr. Monfeld. Discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Carries 3-1. Proposed resolution authorizing and endorsing a grant application for the Urban and Community Forestry Grant Program to the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. This came to us by way of Massena Electric Department.
Used to be a lot easier to just say Urban Day, huh?
I know.
So,
Second.
Second by Mr. Rocco. Discussion. Resolution poll individually. Mr. Rocco.
Aye.
Mr. Carvel. Mr. DeShays.
Aye.
Mr. Adair.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Is
That's
it
your
fifth
warrants.
grade that they do that?
What's that?
Is it fifth grade, the kids, remember back in the day?
It's elementary.
It was, I think it's
I think it's
fifth
fifth.
grade, we got a tree, right?
Voucher warrants.
I move that the voucher signed by trustee Carvel and myself be approved.
Second by Mr. Carvel. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Monthly reports were on the, were there? No. Communication correspondence, the only one I have is it's trustee Apple's birthday on Thursday. Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. How the hell did you think of
he
I have
has
great
his ways.
resources.
that? Wow,
It's amazing.
Did you Google them?
And if you think I'm gonna tell you that Monique told me that, I'm not gonna tell you.
thank you.
Closing public comment period. We need a very brief executive session with the chief to talk a personnel matter.
So moved.
Mr. Otto? Second by Mr. Adair. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Thank you.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.